welcome to Meeple University's How to Play Coldwater Crown. Fish sold separately. In Coldwater Crown, 2 to 4 players play the role of anglers entering the Coldwater Crown fishing tournament, casting their bait out into the water in an attempt to catch the best haul of fish. The game ends after one player has caught 12 or more fish, and players then enter those fish into the various fishing tournaments. The player who scores the most points from these tournaments wins the game. The game also comes with a solo mode, which I won't go through during this video. To set up the main board, first take the 3 small fish piles, each sorted by their colour. Shuffle each deck separately, place it in the draw pile of the corresponding coloured area, and then place 1 card into each of these 4 catch locations. Repeating this for the river, lake, and shore locations. Shuffle the larger sized Master Angler Challenge deck, place it next to the board, and deal 4 cards from it face up. Take 3 angler tokens, place 1 on the red, 1 on the yellow, and 1 on the green, setting each of them to the number 1 side. Next, you'll be setting up all of the award tiles. Firstly, take the 5 coloured tags, randomly select 1, and place it on this space of the board. Take the first player to 12 fish token and place it here. Take the 3 stacks of coloured location awards and stack them in descending victory point order. Remove the 4 if you're playing with 3 players, and remove the 2 as well if you're playing with 2 players. Then place the coloured stacks in their relevant locations on the board. Do the same with the first player to 8 species challenge, which is placed here, and the small species challenge, which is placed here. The Master Angler Challenge tiles are all worth 2 victory points, so the stack order doesn't matter here. Simply take as many tiles as there are players in the game for each, and place them on their relevant spaces. Finally, take the mystery weight tokens, each of which is worth 1 victory point, shuffle them up into a random order, and then place them on this space here with 1 number visible. The main board is now ready for play. To set up each player's player area, each player takes a player board oriented the same way as the fishing zone on the board, that is 3, 4, 5, and 6. Each player then takes an angler token set to the number 1 side and draws a random tackle token from the pile of face down tackle tokens. Then each player dips into the bait bag, taking 3 pieces of bait to place in the number 3 zone and 4 pieces of bait to place in the number 4 zone. If you draw the 1 piece of white bait, return it to the bag and draw another. You're now ready to play the game. There are 7 action spaces on the board. 6 of them have a colour and are associated with one of the fishing regions, and the 7th one is over here. These are activated using angler tokens. At the start of your turn, you will have 1 angler token in your possession, and there will be 3 spaces occupied by angler tokens on the board. Each player's turn comprises 3 steps. Firstly, the player takes his or her angler token on the side that is currently on and places it onto one of the 4 available action spaces, taking the action associated with that space and varying that action depending on whether the token is on the 1 or 2 side. Then, secondly, the player chooses one of the 3 angler tokens that was already on the board, not the one that was placed, to retrieve. The player chooses the token and performs the action of the space that it was on. Again, modifying the action depending on whether the token retrieved was a 1 or a 2. Finally, the player takes the retrieved token into his or her supply and flips it to the other side. It is important that the player leaves the token on the side it was flipped to until the next round. Once the player has completed these 3 steps, play passes clockwise to the next player, and players keep taking turns in this manner until the end of the game. Next, I'll talk about what all the different action spaces on the board do. One of the primary things that you'll be trying to do in this game is to clear your bait box of bait, because it's when you empty one of the 4 portions of your bait box of bait that you'll be able to catch a fish. The 6 coloured action locations on the board allow you to remove bait from your bait box. If you place a number 1 or retrieve a number 1 from a coloured space, you take 1 piece of bait of that colour from each zone of your bait box if there is bait of that colour there, and put it in the discard pile. If you place or retrieve a 2 from the board, you take all of the bait of the corresponding colour from all of your zones and discard it. All of the discarded bait goes into a common discard pile, not into the fresh bait bag. When you clear one of the zones of your bait box completely of bait, you will catch a fish of the colour corresponding to the last piece of bait you removed. But I'll go into how this works in more detail later in the video. The 7th action space is the port, and there are 2 different actions available at the port. You can either put new bait into your bait box, or you can take a Master Angler Challenge card from the available supply. If you place or retrieve a number 1, you may take one of these actions. And if you place or retrieve a number 2, you can perform 2 of these actions, either each action once or one of the actions twice. To add new bait to your bait box, choose one of the 4 zones of your bait box which is either empty or only partially full. If a zone has as many pieces of bait in it as its number, it is full and you cannot use that zone in this action. Then dip into the bait bag and one at a time take pieces of bait and fill the zone up until it reaches its capacity number. If while doing this you draw the single piece of white bait in the game, return it and all of the discarded bait to the bag. This is the resetting mechanism for the bait. Then keep drawing until the zone is full. To take a Master Angler card, choose any one of the 4 face-up Master Angler challenges or draw blindly off the top of the pack. Take the card, add it to your supply face up, and flip the top card to replace it. At no point can you have more than 3 unfinished Master Angler cards, and there is no way of discarding or replacing a card if you find you'd rather another one later in the game. While a player has active Master Angler challenges, anytime the player were to discard bait which matches the colours of the squares on that card, the player can instead put the bait on the card and contribute to catching that particular fish or crustacean. So in this case, the player taking the yellow bait action would discard, instead of discarding these 2 bait into the discard pile, would place them on the crab. When the player later discarded another yellow bait, this would be filled up, this crab would be caught, this bait would be discarded, and the crab would move to the completed side of the player's player board. These will be worth 1 victory point each at the end of the game and contribute to the Master Angler Challenge trophy bonuses. When a player removes the final piece of bait from one zone of the bait box, that player will immediately catch the corresponding fish. The colour of the fish that's caught matches the final piece of bait that was removed from the bait box, in this case black. The fish within that region which is caught matches the zone from which the bait was removed. In this case, zone 4. So in this case, the player would catch this rainbow fish here and add it to his or her supply of caught fish. Then take the top fish from the draw pile and place it into the corresponding location. Next, the player checks for any trophies which might be earned from catching that fish. Firstly, check secretly the back side of the fish, and if the weight of the fish matches the current face-up mystery weight trophy, take that trophy. That will be worth 1 victory point at the end of the game. A new such trophy will become available for any players who catch that next weight of fish going on through the game. But note that this award can only be taken as a fish is caught. Previously caught fish cannot be used for the new mystery weight. Each fish species has a weight range which is printed on the front of the fish card, but you won't know exactly where within that range the fish is going to be until you have caught it and flipped it over. There are 5 fish cards for each species, each with a different weight. The exception to this is the pike, which is found in the lake. There are 10 pike cards, and the pike has the widest weight range of all of the different species. If the fish that the player caught completes the player's set of a roach, a flounder, and a perch, which is the smallest species in each of the 3 colours, the player takes the top small species challenge trophy. If the player's caught fish gives the player 8 different species of fish caught, the player takes the topmost available one of these trophies, fastest to 8 species challenge. If the player's caught fish brings the player to a total of 12 caught fish, the player takes the sole first to 12 fish challenge trophy. This is worth 2 points and triggers the end of the game. Note that Master Angler Challenge cards do not count for either of these 2 awards. When you clear either Zone 5 or Zone 6 of your bait box, you get an additional bonus. Clearing Zone 5, in addition to taking Zone 5's fish, lets you take 1 random tackle token from the face down supply, which you'll then be able to use on subsequent turns. And I'll go through tackle next. When you clear Zone 6, you can, instead of taking the fish from the corresponding Zone 6, take the fish from the top of that location's pile, putting that in your supply instead of the Zone 6 fish. There are 4 different types of tackle token in the game, which is printed on the bottom corner of the board, and these can be spent for a once-off bonus which will help you with your fishing. The reel and the lure will help you manipulate bait in your bait box. You can spend a reel token to swap 2 bait tokens from zone to zone with each other. And you can spend a lure token to discard 2 pieces of the same coloured bait from your bait box. Using the lure might result in you catching fish immediately. The line and the rod can be spent when you're already catching a fish in order to give you more flexibility on that action. When you have cleared a zone to catch a fish, you can spend a line to take a fish from an adjacent zone. So in this case, you would be catching this salmon, but a line could be spent to catch one of these 2 fish instead. The rod allows you to catch a fish from the same zone but a different location. So clearing this bait would normally give you access to this mackerel, but by spending the rod, the player could take one of these 2 Zone 5 fish from one of the other locations. Players can spend multiple tackle tokens as part of the same turn or the same action. The end of the game can be triggered in one of 2 ways. Either when a player catches his or her 12th fish and takes the first to 12 fish challenge trophy, or when a player catches a fish and there is no draw pile fish left to replace it. Once that happens, Each other player takes one more turn, and then the game proceeds to endgame scoring. Next, each player needs to determine which fish will be entered into the 3 location competitions. Players can only enter their caught fish for that location into the competition and can only enter 1 fish of each species. This will be up to 4 fish at the river and shore, or up to 3 fish at the lakes. Players will normally want to choose the heaviest of each species, as this award is determined on the total weight of fish. However, if a player has a certain species of fish where a lighter fish is tagged with the chosen tag colour, remember that this was placed on the board at the start of the game, the player may prefer to choose the lighter fish, because having a matching tag colour is worth a guaranteed victory point, whereas having the extra weight is not necessarily a guaranteed win in the weight competition. The players discard the fish that have not been chosen, they take no further part in scoring, and then simultaneously all players will reveal which fish they have chosen for that location. Whichever player has the highest total weight takes the most victory points for that location, and all of the points are allocated as such. Players with no fish from that location would gain no award at all. In the event of a tie for total weight, players consult the timestamps on each of their fish, and whoever has the earliest overall timestamp breaks the tie. This same process is carried out for the river, the lake, and the shore. Next, players check to see whether or not they qualify for any of the Master Angler awards. If a player has collected at least one set of 3 of the same species, the player takes one of these award tokens, and if the player has collected at least 1 card of each of the 4 species, ray, char, dogfish, and crab, the player takes one of these tokens. The player cannot have more than 1 copy of either of these awards, but can use the same card to qualify for each award. Finally, count up your final score. Add the victory point value for all trophies that you have collected. Add 1 point for each Master Angler card that you've completed. And flip over your submitted fish and gain 1 extra victory point for any that is tagged with the same colour as the tag that was placed on the board at the start of the game. In this case 2. There are no additional points for leftover tackle or incomplete cards, and the player who has the highest score wins. In the event of a tie, whichever player has the single fish with the earliest timestamp submitted into the competitions breaks the tie. And that's how to play Coldwater Crown. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoyed playing. Happy fishing, and please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to hear more from Meeple University.